A firing squad had not been used since Rodney Lee Garner faced a 5-man firing line in Utah back in 2010. The return of the firing squad has forced America to confront a difficult question. Is this method a barbaric relic of the past, or is it actually the most humane option we have left? These are the top 4 states with executions in 2025. Florida had 19, while Texas, Alabama, and South Carolina each had 5. South Carolina is the only one that had 3 by firing squad. The story begins with a supply shortage. For years, South Carolina, like many other states, was unable to procure the drugs needed for lethal injection due to pharmaceutical companies refusing to sell them for executions. People are divided on the issue because on one side, you have the argument for reliability. For decades, lethal injection was sold to the public as a medicalized, peaceful way to die. But the reality has often been different, with botched executions, missing veins, and expiring drugs. Proponents of the firing squad, including surprisingly some of the inmates themselves, argue that it offers something lethal injection cannot: certainty. A synchronized volley of bullets to the heart is mechanically simple. It causes unconsciousness in seconds and death almost instantly. In their eyes, if the state is going to kill, it should do so quickly, without the risk of prolonged torture we've seen with chemical executions. But then there's an opposing view. Critics argue that efficiency does not excuse barbarity. They see the firing squad as a violent regression, a Wild West punishment that has no place in a modern society. Opponents point out that unlike the sanitary appearance of lethal injection, the firing squad is visceral and bloody. They argue it traumatizes everyone involved, from the witnesses to the shooters themselves. It strips the condemned of any final dignity. To them, it is not justice. It is state-sponsored violence in its rawest form. Due to a long-term inability to purchase lethal injection drugs, South Carolina law forces inmates to choose between the electric chair or the firing squad. Most inmates and their attorneys view the firing squad as the lesser of two evils, compared to the physical trauma of electrocution. So what exactly is a modern-day firing squad? The execution takes place in a death chamber at the Broad River Correctional Institution. The inmate is strapped into a specialized metal chair with restraints. The chair sits in a corner, surrounded by protective equipment to catch bullets and prevent ricochets. A hood is placed over the inmate's head. A small target is placed over the inmate's heart. The 3 shooters are positioned 15 feet away, hidden behind a wall with a small rectangular opening. This ensures the shooters are not visible to the witnesses or the inmate. Witnesses watch from newly installed bullet-resistant glass. Upon the warden's order, the team fires simultaneously. A doctor then enters to certify the death. The first was Brad Sigmon on March 7, 2025. They lived together in a trailer near Becky's parents. But early in that year, after Becky ended the relationship and moved in with her parents, Sigmon became increasingly obsessed with her. Sigmon's plan was to tie up her parents, David and Gladys Lark, and kidnap Becky. But that plan would never take place. On April 26, 2001, Sigmon waited all night in the home next to the Larks. And he waited for Becky to leave to take their children to school before entering the home. He surprised David in the kitchen area, who asked Gladys to bring his gun. Sigmon then began beating David with a baseball bat. When Gladys entered the kitchen, Sigmon chased her back into the living room, where he struck her over and over again with the same baseball bat. He then returned to the kitchen and beat David some more, only to return to the living room and continue beating Gladys. David sustained 9 crushing blows to his skull. He had bruising on his ears and left shoulder, and a defensive wound on the back of his right hand. His skull was nearly broken in 2. A pathologist testified injuries indicated swings of the bat were with such force that they were like home run swings in baseball. Gladys similarly received 9 injuries to her skull and had defensive wounds to her forearms, her wrists, and her elbows. That indicated she attempted to put her arms up across her head to defend herself from the home run swings. She had also inhaled blood into her lungs, indicating she was alive following the injuries that caused her skull fractures. She was breathing through fractured sinuses, inhaling that blood down into her lungs. Sigmon then retrieved David's revolver and waited for Becky to return home. When she arrived, he forced her into her own car and drove away. But during the ride, he told her, "I'm going to kill you, and I've just killed your parents." Fearing for her life, Becky jumped from the car. He also exited the car and began firing at her. One of the bullets, fired from her own father's revolver, struck her in the foot, causing her to fall and hit her head on the pavement. A passerby helped Becky as Sigmon sped away. Sigmon left the state and was captured in Tennessee 10 days later, after his own mother, thankfully, helped law enforcement capture him. He would later confess to the murders. He was convicted on 2 counts of murder and 1 count of first-degree burglary, receiving 2 death sentences. His attorney argued he was suffering from severe mental illness and a psychotic breakdown at the time of the crimes. Sigmon chose the firing squad over the electric chair. His lawyer said he believed the electric chair would cook him alive, and also feared a botched lethal injection. His execution was the first by firing squad in the U.S. since 2010. Just a month later, on April 11, 2025, came the execution of Mikhail Dean Mahdi. On July 14, 2004, Mahdi, who lived in Virginia, embarked upon a crime spree that would span 4 states. Mahdi stole a .380 caliber pistol from his neighbor, a set of Virginia license plates, and a station wagon. He left Virginia and headed for North Carolina. On July 15th, he entered an Exxon gas station in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, armed with that .380 pistol. He took a can of beer from a cooler and placed it on the counter. The store clerk, Christopher Boggs, asked him for identification. As Boggs was looking at his ID, Mahdi fatally shot him at point-blank range. He then fired another shot into Boggs as he lay on the floor dying. He then attempted, unsuccessfully, to open the register. He left the store with a stolen can of beer and headed for South Carolina. Early on the morning of July 17th, he approached Corey Pitts as he sat at a traffic light in downtown Columbia, South Carolina. Mahdi stuck a gun in his face and carjacked Pitts' Ford Expedition. About 45 minutes down the road, he stopped at a Wilco Hess gas station in Calhoun County and attempted to buy gas with a credit card. He tried to do so for 45 minutes to an hour. Due to his suspicious behavior, store clerks called police. Aware that the clerks had been alerted, he left the Expedition at the gas pumps and fled on foot into the woods behind the gas station. About a quarter to half a mile from the station, he came upon farmland owned by Police Captain James Myers, a 31-year veteran law enforcement officer and fireman. He broke into a workshop on the Myers property. Once inside the workshop, he watched television and examined Myers' gun collection. He found Myers' shotgun and used tools in the shop to saw off the barrel and paint it black. He also took Myers' .22 caliber rifle and laid in wait for Myers. That day, Myers had been at the beach celebrating the birthdays of his wife, sister, and daughter. He had visited with his father before returning to his farm. Upon arriving at the farm, Myers stopped by the workshop, where he was confronted by Mahdi. Myers was shot 9 times with his own .22 rifle. As if that wasn't enough, he poured diesel fuel on Myers' body and set the body on fire. He stole his police-issued truck and left with his shotgun, his .22 rifle, and his police-issued assault rifle. Later that evening, Myers' wife, also a law enforcement officer, became worried when Myers did not return home. Mrs. Myers drove to the workshop and discovered Myers' burned body lying in a pool of blood. Mahdi escaped to Florida, where he was spotted by police on July 21st, driving Myers' truck. He fled police on foot with the rifle in hand. When cornered by police, he gave up. Mahdi pleaded guilty to the murders. A judge, rather than a jury, determined his sentence. His defense team later argued that his initial legal representation was inadequate and failed to present mitigating evidence about his abusive and chaotic childhood, including paramilitary training he was forced into by his father. He chose the firing squad over other available methods. In a letter written by Mahdi and shared by his attorneys, he wrote, "I am guilty as hell. What I've done is irredeemable." Lastly, we have Stephen Corey Bryant. During an 8-day period in October 2004, Bryant committed a series of random and brutal attacks in Sumter County, South Carolina. His victims were Clifton Dale Gainey, Christopher Earl Burgess, and William Irving Taitgen Jr. From what I can tell, Bryant was a burglar. He would case isolated rural homes looking for vulnerable victims. He'd show up in the middle of the day pretending to be looking for someone or having car trouble. He burglarized Dennis's home office the day after visiting him. Next, he broke into Eamon's home while no one was there, cutting phone wires and stealing a pistol and ammunition. It was at that moment he went from a burglar to an armed criminal. Not a good combination. Brown, who was fishing alone at the watery river, was shot in the back. He survived. On October 9th, he killed an acquaintance named Clifton Gainey, whose body he left on a rural road. He then stole electronics and an aquarium from his trailer before setting it on fire. 2 days later, Bryant went to victim Tate Jen's home, who he shot 9 times. After killing the victim, he burned his face and eyes with a cigarette before looting the house. The now dead victim's wife and daughter called the victim's cell phone. Each time he'd answer, he'd tell them he was a prowler and that Mr. Tate Jen, their father and husband, was dead. He left 2 notes and scrawled a message on the wall. Victim number 4 in 2 weeks. Catch me if you can. On another wall, the word catch and some letters were written in the victim's blood. 2 days later, he met victim Burgess at a convenience store around 4:30 a.m. They left together, and then less than 2 hours later, a hunter found his body riddled with gunshot wounds on a road in a rural area. Bryant pled guilty to 3 counts of murder. His defense presented evidence of a troubled history, including alleged childhood sexual abuse. They filed last-minute appeals arguing the sentencing judge failed to consider fetal alcohol spectrum disorder as a mitigating factor. These appeals were denied. His execution was the 50th in South Carolina since the reinstatement of the death penalty in 1976. He had written Catch Me If You Can. We can only hope someone was kind enough to write caught on the bullets that killed him. According to the Associated Press, Bryant's final meal was mixed seafood stir-fry, fried fish over rice, egg rolls, stuffed shrimp, 2 candy bars and German chocolate cake. Sweets. Life is sweet. And in his last moments, I doubt he gave any thought to the sweet lives he took. The wonderful people these men murdered weren't given the chance to choose their method of death. They didn't get years and years to live after they received their murderous death penalties. No, these murderers prescribed it, and in my opinion, they got exactly what was coming to them. As a matter of fact, if giving them lethal injection and the electric chair makes them suffer more, then those should be the only methods of death. That's my angry opinion after researching details of the murders and picturing the violence through courtroom testimony. What are your thoughts on the return of the firing squad? Like the video and subscribe if you like the content. As always, be vigilant, be safe.